Ravi, I mean, you worked, I mean, now you are with Bank of Baroda, you were with Microsoft, you have built organizations, you wrote that book on how MNCs can conquer India. I mean, let me hear your views on what do you make of this disruption we are talking about? Is it paranoia? Is it for real? What do you think?
Well, there's a real problem going after Nandan because everything useful that needs to be said has already been said. But no, so when we think about disruption, most of us, and particularly in an audience like this, thinks about that company that marries innovation with some new business model, challenges everybody, and so we think about Nokia, we think about Kodak and so forth. What I've been very interested in the last few months is disruption playing out not at the level of industries and companies, but countries. And so, I thought I'll throw that out here. So take India, for example, right? It's fairly sort of amazing to me that in 1750, India and China each accounted for 25% of global industrial output. And in 150 years, by the year 1900, our share had declined to 1.6%. So talk of disruption, this is pretty dramatic. And there are two reasons why this happened. One, of course, was colonization. But the other reason is because of the disruption caused by the first industrial revolution. If you recollect, this was all about the steam engine and the powered textile loom, and it created a productivity revolution which just wiped out Indian handloom. And so India deindustrialized. So it's a pretty dramatic example of what can happen with these transitions. And the reason why I think this is so important and interesting right now, that we're having this conversation, is we are in the early stages of what's called the fourth industrial revolution, right? And it's just not when we think technology, it's not just about AI. We're seeing fairly dramatic advances in every field, right? Whether it's gene editing, space travel, new materials, the works. And it's all driven by, it's called science-based innovation. And so this fourth industrial revolution seems to be even larger and more sweeping in its implications than the first industrial revolution. So I feel that we're sitting at a moment in time which is pretty binary. If India can sort of really ride this wave, we can leapfrog to the top stack and leapfrog many stages of development. At the same time, if we fumble around and don't get our act together, I think the consequences could be pretty dire at the level of the country. And so the question becomes, if you look at the job loss projections, Nandan's always an optimist. I'm a chronic pessimist. But so I tend to believe what that recent Oxford study and the McKinsey study throw out, which is some 67% of jobs, I saw that up there as well, 67% of jobs in India and 77% of jobs in China pretty much won't exist over the next 20 years. And, to some people this seems unbelievable. And then you read these little factoids. Just Foxconn alone installed 40,000 robots last year. God knows what they did this year. And they sent home in a single factory 60,000 people. And China as a whole installed more new robots this year than they hired people. And then you look at stalwarts of Indian IT services, and you're seeing pretty much jobless growth. So it's here, and it's very believable. So, all these industrial revolutions, what they tend to do is, in the short and medium term, destroy jobs. In the long term, they create jobs. So net, if you look back, there's job creation. But have no doubt about it, short and medium term is going to be pretty dislocating. So the interesting thing, I think, for us in this room is, so how are we going to go after those juicy, well-paying new jobs, and where are they going to be created?
What are they?
And to me, it seems like they'll happen wherever the innovation is happening, the science-based innovation, and the disproportionate amount of it is happening outside India. It's happening in the US, it's happening in China, and to a much smaller extent in parts of Europe, etc. And so, when we think about game-changing companies, if you think Tesla, you think Amazon, you think Illumina, companies like that. And so it feels like unless we do something different, we're going to lose out on the big, job creation opportunity. Then I've been thinking about why is it that America is able to produce so many of these? Why is it almost like a factory? Well, because it is a factory. They have a factory for science-based innovation, and it's pretty systematic. You have, world-class science universities, research universities. You have world-class industrial labs, whether it's Microsoft Research, GE, etc. A lot of the long-term research, risky research, is funded by the US government, particularly through DARPA, NSF. You look at the immigration policies, until we don't know what's going to happen next year. But until now, they've done a pretty good job mopping up smart people from all over the world. And then you couple this with the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and this is what comes out of it. You contrast that with our challenge today. There's a lot of entrepreneurship, but it's of a very different sort. When you think about our research capabilities, our top university is Indian Institute of Science, and it makes it appear in somewhere in the 300 of the global rankings. We've got one world-class life sciences institute, which is NCBS right here. So we're really, really, really quite anemic in our capability. You look at where does a bright young scientist go? Well, you can go to about 3 good CSR labs. You can go to an MNC research lab, or like in my time, you leave the country. Immigration, I see my friend Sean out there, but our immigration policies are designed to keep out people, okay? Whereas we need to think about skilled talent being very different and find a way to attract them. So there are a whole host of issues. Think about regulation. Does our regulation encourage adoption of new technologies, or at the first sign of risk is our instinctive reaction to ban something, okay? So I think there's a whole host of issues and challenges we have to overcome before we can really become the engine of job creation in the ways that Nandan talked about.
Sure. The other thing is, if we look at financial services itself, we've been tracking that over past few weeks. It seemed to have gained momentum. When you talked about regulation and how good or bad it is. What does technology disruption mean if you are someone working in a bank today?
If it's in a public sector bank, it means nothing. Right? So that's my challenge. How do you
want to make a disclosure?
How do you get people energized when there's complete job security and they're saying, what problem are you trying to solve out here? But I think things are changing quite a lot. But I don't think the challenges of an individual in a financial services is that different from an individual in an IT services company or anywhere else. There's this wonderful video which came out 18 months ago. It's on YouTube. It's called Humans Need Not Apply.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, you should see it. But it says it doesn't matter what you do, whether you're a truck driver or a stockbroker, lawyer, or even a CXO, your life's going to change. Right? Already we know that 50% of the tasks that we do can be automated no matter what you do. So life is about to change, and Nandan's already alluded to some of the things. I'm writing a book which should come out soon. I missed my deadline for the Jaipur Lit Fest, but the working title is WTF Do I Do With My Life? Because I think it's the sort of essential question that many people are asking. To me, the first thing is you've got to imagine your career and life very differently. As Nandan also said, these long stretches are unlikely to happen. And we have to all start thinking of ourselves, if not as an entrepreneur, which is not for everyone, at least as self-employed. Okay. So your life is a set of gigs and a serial set of gigs, okay? That's how I've been thinking about my life, right? Even when I joined Microsoft, Nandan, I don't know if he's left the room, he was one of those who vociferously said, don't do this, it's going to end badly. So I said, okay, he may be right. So how do I think about it as a project rather than a career, okay? And I've found that to be a really helpful mindset, okay? I'm not going to do what I'm doing forever. So if you think about yourself as a series of interesting gigs and prepare yourself for that, I think it'll play out much better than imagining a predictable career and so forth. Number 2, you absolutely have to have what the HR profession like Hema and all call learning agility. You need to have useful skills and constantly reinvent your skills in ways that I think we do understand. Point number 3, I think, is, that in this room are some well-known people. They're brands. See, Nandan is a big brand. But each of us is a brand. And so you have to be thoughtful about cultivating your professional reputation, right? in your field, I noticed that you've been doing a fairly careful job of that. So you have to have a reputation because that's all you carry with you. You need to have your networks, and you can't just allow these to happen. You have to be somewhat intentional and conscious about it. And finally, I would say, you need to have the courage to take risk. Okay, there was this book, really good book that came out, silly book actually, 15 years ago. It was called Who Moved My Cheese, right? But it's a powerful book because if you are the mouse that tries to sort of seek new cheese, the chances that things may go wrong. But if you're the mouse that stays behind waiting to be saved, there's a 100% probability it's going to end badly. So I think we need to all be like that first mouse and be slightly more adventurous. And so those are some commonsensical things that I keep telling all young people.
And I think
now that I have mostly gray hair.
No, this clearly applies to anyone. I mean, no matter what sector you're working in.
It's horizontal. It's absolutely horizontal.
Just before we break, invite some questions. In your experience, in your career, Ravi, can you identify some skills that you believe are going to die, or can you pick skills that will survive? It's like The Economist puts out this chart called job that would be eaten by software.
Yeah.
What would be that for India?
I think there is one skill that will last as long as humanity is around, which is getting along with people.
Yeah.
Okay. You think about it. See, I've moved across amazing range of industries. I started out in diesel engines and trucks. Then I went into software and IT services. Then I'm in apparel, men's apparel, in banking, venture investing. What's common across all this? Just one thing. They all have people. And so if you know how to sort of inspire people, get them working together, whether they're bots around or not, that's a pretty useful thing. If you have an eye for talent, you know how to build a high-performing team, I think that's a pretty durable skill. Okay, if you know how to, so there are a set of things which I think are never going to go away. And then there are a lot of things where the half-life is probably just 2 years or thereabouts. I never used any of the engineering knowledge even though I was, very, very hands-on in engineering for a long time. So I think you should think about, it's like an iceberg. There's that tip that projects out, and then there's stuff under the water. You should be fairly conscious about what are you good at, and how do you make sure that it intersects with what will always be important.
Thank you.